Thank you very much, and thank you very much. It's just lovely, lovely to be here. So, Susan, you have said it right. We're here to explore and offer, I suppose, a little insight into the programmes that we have been working on over the last couple of years. I suppose for me, I first went to the battlefields of Flanders and the Somme in 2001. And I think only when you go to somewhere like that, really can you see the significance of how many young lives were lost. So then the other questions start happening is, why did it happen? How did it affect people back here? Who went there? Why did they join up? So you start asking yourself these questions. And it's a very poignant visit. And as I say, when you're standing, particularly in a cemetery like Tynecott, where there's 12,500 physical headstones, white, beautiful headstones, and then 33,000 names on a back wall of this cemetery where they didn't find them, but they're commemorated in stone. And again, the questions start. So if that happens to me, then surely young people should be educated in that as well, just for themselves to ask the very questions that we're asking. So really, Engage Youth is about a journey for these young people. But it's not that they go out there with no knowledge and no information, because that would be wrong. So what we do is we go into the different communities and they learn their own family history and encouraged to do so. But if they can't find maybe somebody that was involved in World War I within their own family, we certainly look at it from a community aspect as well. And therefore, they have a personal story. Because it's all very well to see 33,000 names, but 33,000 names have 33,000 stories. You know, and it's about picking them stories and learning them stories, because they deserve for us to know them stories, I think. So really and Daryl's going to talk a little bit more about Engage Youth as well. And also what we have found is using the arts as part of this, whether that's poetry. In some cases, some of the young people have been inspired to write their own songs and their own music, which is lovely. We have had performances at particular grave sides, particularly if they were from their own community or within a family and they wanted to do something special, and part of that is, I think, shown in the video as well. So that's Engage Youth, but also it's really important to, with all the information that we get, how do we express that? And for me, the only way I can express that is through music and song. But I also think it's, in another way, giving voice to the young soldiers as well in a different way. And people hear a song or listen to a piece of music or a poem, and they're captured just in a different way. So I'm going to stop talking a little bit, but some of the personal stories that we're going to go into as well at the end are particularly poignant, and Susan just talked a little bit about my own granduncle, Father James, who was a chaplain during World War I, and so there's an interesting story as well. But I'm going to stop now and hand over to Daryl.
Thanks very much, Tracey. As Tracey said, my name's Daryl, and I've been working on the programme with Tracey for 2.5 years now. I don't know how I've done it. But to give you a wee bit more kind of specifics about the programme, we bring together young people from Donegal, the city here, and Belfast as well, in each programme. As Tracey said, when we were sitting down to draw up how the structure of the programme would take, it was very important to us that, and I know from when I was at school and doing this type of kind of cross-community thing, that a lot of times young people see a trip away and they see it as, it's a wee holiday for me, I'm going to get a wee holiday here. And it was very important for me and Tracey that that wasn't what this was going to be. The young people had to have a knowledge and an interest. If they didn't have it when they first signed up, they were going to have it by the time they went to Belgium and France with us. So as Tracey said, we worked with them anywhere between 8 and 13 weeks, depending on the structure of the programme and the timing of the year and stuff, before we went to Belgium and France. And that was both single identity work here in their own different communities and coming together as the three groups as well. Quite intensive work a lot of the time. A lot of programmes were running back to back, but very, very interesting. And I think for me and Tracey, one of the big things when we first sat down to draw up the programme was, is this really going to resonate with the young people? Are young people of today going to be able to take this in? And again, I think that's where the background to it and making it personal to them. What we would have done is, one of the most important things was the research element. So we would encourage them to research their own families. And if someone in their family came up, that was brilliant for them because it gave them that personal connection. However, what we also done, if that didn't happen, we would have got them to research an individual soldier from their area. So there was always going to be some connection to the young people to get that kind of personal feeling and interest in the programme before they went out there. But still, in the back of my mind, before the first time, unlike Tracey, I don't have years and years of experience in this type of work. I come from a lot of youth work background, but not the First World War and the shared history stuff. So I was kind of thinking, you know, how is this going to work? Does this work? And I think Fergal and there's a couple of leaders here, but Fergal was in the very first programme as a leader that we went out with. And it was the very first time that I had ever been out there as well myself. And when we were out there, the difference it made to me, from my background and where I was coming from, it was the first time that I kind of thought, do you know what, this does make a difference. I like to think I'm not that too much older than the young people, but I think maybe I'm wrong in that too. But I'm thinking if this can have the impact on me and where I'm coming from, then surely it's going to have an impact on those young people as well. And we're going to show you a wee video now in a minute of the young people. There was a few videos we had to choose from that we've done throughout the programme, but we chose this one because it shows the young people on the battlefields and what they go through when we're out there. And I think when you hear the young people talk in this video, it'll confirm that there really is a place for this type of work, and it really does make the impact on the young people that we're looking for. Looking back now on the end of the programme, and it's because this one was filmed out in Belgium, it maybe doesn't show this as much, but we've a few other ones as well that are done after the event, months and months after, and you have young people coming in and they're talking about how they still look up the history, they're still researching the people that they found, they're still researching the First World War, and more importantly for us, they're still in contact with the young people from the other areas. You have to understand that the people that we're dealing with are as diverse as people from rural Donegal to people from the centre of Belfast. Totally different backgrounds, totally different experiences of life, even on a day-to-day basis. Forget about the religious and cultural backgrounds, but just on a day-to-day how they operate. Totally different backgrounds, and to see that these young people have become really friends, and I think that word can be used an awful lot, and people say the word friends because they talk on Facebook once every so often, or they tweet each other or whatever. But the people that we worked with, we've had stories of them actually travelling from Belfast to Donegal to meet up again, to go out with each other and things like that there, you know. So
engagement. And
an engagement on the programme. So they were on the 2 years ago now, they were on the very first programme. So there's been real great stories coming from it, and hopefully when you get a wee look at this video now, I'll put it on for you now, that you'll see how the young people talk about out there, and also give you a flavour for what they actually do when they're out there. And just a word on Fort Dunree and the Friends of Mazines, John and PJ, who go out and deliver for us out there. You'll see them on Fergal as well, Fergal Boyle with them. You'll see them on the video as well in this particular one.
And I suppose the lead up as well, the media, they do media with headliners, and so there's a whole creative side to it as well.
The programme's a lot more than just the First World War as well, but obviously that's what we're here to talk about today. There's, as I say, there's anywhere between 8 and 13 weeks, and they do a media qualification before they go out as well as reconciliation and conflict workshops as well. So, but this gives you a flavour of this, and I'm not just saying this because we have a couple of leaders as well, but the leaders make a huge difference to this programme. We take 7 young people from each area and a leader, and without the leaders, and all of the leaders have done it totally voluntarily, on extra hours from their own jobs and stuff as well, and without them the programme couldn't have ran as smoothly as it did. So I'll put the wee video on, and hopefully you enjoy it, and it gives you a wee taste for what the kind of stuff we do.
Move away. Thank you. I think showing a film like that just helps, because it's very hard to sit here and talk about what happens over there, or the sights and and particularly the journey that the young people are on as well, because it's all new to them. And as Daryl explained, from Donegal, from the city here, and also from Belfast. So they meet here maybe about probably about 4 times before they go. So really the friendships are cemented in Belgium, that's for sure, and they get to know each other very well. And we are going to have to buy a hat now, because the engagement is between a young girl in Donegal and a young fella from East Belfast. So it's lovely. So that I think they're going to name the date.
I think just actually watching that, and God knows how many times we've watched it now, Tracey. But what really struck me, and it's kind of what I was saying before, is when the different young people were talking, how they were each almost talking about different things they got out of the programme. Some of them had said learning about how the two sides work together, and then the next person said meeting new people, and then someone mentioned the OCN. And do you know, and it's just great to hear that them all having different opinions of what they got out of the programme. So there's so many different aspects to the programme.
And the young girl there that found, she always remembered when she was growing up this picture in the house, and it was her great grandfather, I think, and she just always remembered this picture and this grave. So when she knew that she was going out, she showed us this picture. So we took her to the very grave, and she just wanted to recreate that picture that had happened so many years previously. And it was just lovely to have that. And for her, that's a connection now for the rest of her life as well. So that is in terms of Engage Youth and the work that we do with the young people. And I think to date there's maybe been about nearly 200 young people that we've taken out over the last couple of years. And to hear them say there, it's the best experience of my life, because it's not an easy subject. You know, it really is not an easy subject. You're getting young people up in the morning and you're taking them to cemeteries. You know, and so there has to be, you have to fill in the other aspects of it with fun and building relationships, and we do that as well, for sure. And it's really important that that happens. So the other side of this today is some of the personal stories. And it's really, really important that we go to a cemetery in Belgium or France, or we don't even have to go there. We could just walk down the street here to the Diamond War Memorial. And every one of them, 756 names, has a story behind it, and a very, very important story. And at times, when we have worked with the young people from the city here, particularly Reach Across, and we went down to the memorial and they picked some of the names there and they'd done the research, and then we visited the graves out there. So things like there's one woman on that memorial, Laura Gailey. And I never knew this information, but it's only people like historians like Trevor Temple, Seamus Breslin, people like that are working on it, and Eamon Baker, who actually highlighted the story for me. And we made a short film about it as well. But it also, there's lots happening with that story actually as well, and it, I think when people see it, it inspires them maybe to do something else as well. So we're going to take another 2 stories now, and then we'll have a few questions, and we're going to try and probably do these as quickly as possible. But I'll hand over to Daryl for the first one.
Yeah, so the 2 stories we're going to do are focused on music that Tracey has written, and we're going to give you, I was giving somebody abuse today too, but using the word similar to that. So we're going to give you the wee background to where the music came from, and then Tracey will play it in tune. So the first one we're going to talk about here. See what
I have to put up with for 2.5 years. Not easy.
The first one is Bernard McGeehan, and I'm sure a few of you probably know of Bernard's story, but if you don't, I'll give you a background, and it's a very long and more complex story than we have time to tell today. So I'll give you a quick synopsis of it. Bernard was born in Raphoe in Donegal, and then with his family moved here to the city. Worked for a while in the post office. As far as I'm aware, he then and his family moved to Dublin shortly before the war broke out. And Bernard went to Liverpool to sign on. Now Bernard, from what we've kind of read and the things that we know at the minute, if it was now, today, Bernard would probably be placed somewhere on the autism spectrum. But when he got to the war, first of all, Bernard only went to the war because he loved working with horses. When he went to Dublin, he was working as a groom of horse, and he thought this would be a great opportunity to get to work with the horses, get them prepared, and he would be well behind the front lines and he wouldn't be in any danger. And sure, wouldn't it all be over by Christmas? Or that's what we were told. So Bernard signed up, went out there, but then after the huge losses in the Battle of the Somme, Bernard found himself on the front line. And because, as I said, nowadays Bernard would probably be considered somewhere on the autism spectrum, but in them days they called him stupid and slow and all the kind of words that were used back then to describe. And Bernard, it's documented, was badly bullied in the trenches. There's stories out there like people throwing handfuls of rocks at him and pretending it was shrapnel and things like this. So Bernard wasn't really cut out for the trenches in the front line and never went there to be on the front line. He was there to be a groom of horse. And after one particular battle, Bernard just couldn't take it anymore. Again, looking back now and what we know now, he was probably suffering from post-traumatic stress or shell shock or something like that. And he left his own battalion. But he walked for miles and miles and miles and days to try and find them again. And eventually he came across a different battalion. And he approached them and said, I need to get back to my battalion. I've lost my battalion. But at this stage, his clothes were in tatters. He had lost his gun. Initially, he was taken in and treated very, very well, fed and sorted out. And then he was returned. He found out that his own battalion had now moved from the Somme area up to near Popering in Belgium. So he was taken and escorted back to his own battalion. But when he got there, Bernard was accused of desertion because he had left his battalion and because he had lost his gun. And he was sent for a court-martial. Bernard, and it's a lovely, me and Tracey actually reading through it yesterday, and there's a lovely line, well not a lovely line, but a great, the way it's described in one of the bits of writing that we were reading about. The court-martial lasted 20 minutes. And Bernard really wasn't allowed any kind of counsel for himself. It was just him and the hierarchy. And in this bit it just says, 20 minutes to decide a person's life. And that kind of hit me hard, you know, 20 minutes to decide whether someone lived or died. Back then, it was, they would have got testimonials from the majors or the officers in charge of the battalion as to the worth of this soldier. And the one, I could be wrong, but in my kind of opinion, the one that sealed Bernard's fate was his commanding officer sent through. And again, I read on after we left yesterday, and one of the things it said, there was 2 pieces of paper that decided Bernard's fate, 2 testimonials. And in one of them, the officer in charge said Bernard was worthless as a soldier. And that was, then, to me, can you imagine sitting there as Bernard and hearing those words? Bernard did speak at the court-martial, and he said about not getting a break for 18 months. He had no leave and all this stuff. But as I say, there was no counsel for Bernard. And after 20 minutes, it was decided that Bernard would be shot at dawn. And on the 2nd of November 1916, Bernard was indeed shot at dawn. Actually, just a wee caveat to that was we actually had a group out, and Rachel, it was your group, group out from Irish Street, one from the parish in Donegal, and one from centre of Belfast. And it wasn't designed at all, and we always use the Bernard story in the programme as well. Well, just by a quirk of fate, to the very day, 97 years, we were standing in the execution cells at Popering, a few hours after when Bernard would have been executed. It was a couple of days out in terms of dates, but to the very day, the Thursday, it was to the very day, and we had a group from Donegal out there at that very time. And it was kind of an emotional time for the group then, you know, when we kind of realised that and we were talking about it. But that's just a wee caveat. As I say, Bernard was shot at dawn. He was one of 306 people who were shot at dawn. And back then, it was seen as a disgrace that you were shot at dawn. It would have brought disgrace in your family back home and things like this. So it wasn't nice for Bernard, you know. And luckily, 90 odd years later, in 2006, the British government decided to pardon all 306 of the shot at dawns, and that included Bernard. And that's where I'll let Tracey take up the story.
Yeah. Yeah, which was great, and the fact that they realised that something needed to happen. They needed to acknowledge these young men. And Bernard was 24 years of age. Now, none of us can imagine, but being in a cell, you're from Donegal, you are in a cell and you know you're going to be shot in the morning. And you're 24. You know, that's really, really difficult stuff. All the questions you can only imagine would be, if you're that worthless as a soldier, why did you even join up? You know, why were you there? So in 2006, they got a pardon. And then, of course, Sam Starrett, who wrote The Worthless Soldier, who was my partner, he wrote this an amazing play called The Worthless Soldier about Bernard's life. And Bernard, really, there was one scene in that where it was the night before, and the padre came in to talk to him, and Bernard didn't want to hear any of it at all. But so with, I suppose, research like that done and helping Sam to work on The Worthless Soldier, the Last Post Association approached me in 2007 to 2008 to write a piece of music that would sum up 4 years of that terrible war for the 90th anniversary of the armistice. And I didn't really know what to do. I thought, that's a big, big thing to ask. But I knew Bernard's story, and it seemed appropriate. And that somehow Bernard would be remembered in a very, very special way now, because there was no name on any memorial for Bernard. There's nowhere for that family to go and see his name. It just doesn't exist. So to write this piece, and the best thing about it was performed with the Royal Belgian Navy Orchestra out there. But this is the programme for that event. So it was held in a big, big, huge cathedral. So I think it was about 4,000 people at it from all over the world. So this is the programme, and a full page devoted to the story of Bernard McGeehan, which was nice. So everybody leaving there would have known the story of Bernard from County Donegal. This is the piece that I wrote. It's quite simply called Bernard. And sometimes this goes out of tune, ever so slightly. Now, where's my tuner? There it is there. So I suppose musically it tells a story that Daryl just told you. Thank you very much. Okay, I don't know how we're doing for time here at the moment, but what time is it? 1:45. Okay, well, we'll finish on this, and if there is any questions, Dennis. Okay, Kim went well over time there. I must have spoke too much, or either you did, I don't know. No. Probably you. Probably. Okay, so the next piece I want to play is a little bit of a story too, but I will be quick. A number of years ago, I discovered my granduncle's diaries, war diaries. He was a chaplain with the 16th Irish Division with the Connacht Rangers, and I discovered this quite bizarrely in the Central Library, and researching actually the musical The Siege of Derry with Sam, and picked down this wee green book, and it was called the Derryana, and I swear out it comes and it falls at this page, and there's a picture of a chaplain, and it says Father James McRory, World War I. And at this stage I knew that there was somebody connected out there, but I looked at the picture and thought, this is really weird. And yes, that indeed was my granduncle. And so there was an image, so there was a picture to see there, which was good. So when I went back, nobody knew that these diaries existed. But I don't know if anybody's like this. Well, whenever I was growing up, we had the good room that nobody got into, only visitors. And when you're wee, you got asked to do the polishing and stuff like that. And there was these two vases, or vases, whichever way, on top of the mantelpiece. And I usually got the job of the brasso and cloth and polish. And I hated polishing them because there were wee indentations, and I just really hated it. And I never realised there were two shells that my granduncle had taken back, was given to him by a German prisoner of war. And he took them back, and on the front of them was a beautiful image of a woman with long hair, and I suppose trench art, really. And I never really wasn't aware of this. So I went to Belfast to look at the diaries, and they were given down in two big books. And so when I opened up the first bit, it was the first page, and it really is quite a stark note to say, here's my story. I'm long gone now, but if you read this, and if you've any questions, and if you don't agree with what I've written, then that's okay, but come and find where I'm lying, and tell my decaying carcass there. That was his words. It was just so stark to see that. And it was as if he wanted somebody to find these. So 800 pages of his thoughts and his, I suppose, witnessing different things that had happened there. Very angry at the inactivity and the wrong decisions made by generals, and not acknowledging things that had happened as well, and the resources not being available, men that had died for no reason because they didn't have a coat. And they were found the next morning. Not a good thing, you know. He spent 6 weeks in the trenches without being able to lift his head above the parapet, and he writes about this. But it was his decision that he, and I suppose that the chaplain's decision that their place was in the trench with the men, because what spiritual guidance, he needed to be with them, and that was the time to be with them. So this was all new to me. And the story, I suppose, doesn't stop there, because this is the other part of it, and I don't know how things like this happen, but they do. I was out a number of years ago, and UTV had done a little bit of filming. I was honoured to play at the Men in Gate on the 11th of November, and this went out, and a woman from Belfast rings my mum and dad in Dunry, and she said, there's a priest in San Francisco who's very ill, but he has the chalice that Father James used in the trenches during World War I. And Mum and Dad didn't know anything about this. So she said, it would upset me if anything happened to him and this chalice would go into a drawer or a wardrobe somewhere and be forgotten about. So that was okay, didn't hear anything back. I think it was Dad was speaking, so Dad forgot to get her number, and so I couldn't ring her back whenever I come back. But she did ring a few months later to say, unfortunately, the priest had died, but that she had made arrangement, because she was a relative of that priest, to bring the chalice back to Belfast. So she said, if you want to come up and see it, lovely, great. 2 minutes later, I was in the car on the way to Belfast. She lives in the Falls Road, Rosemary, loveliest woman in the world. So when I went in, she immediately took this, was in a blue bag at that stage, dusty blue bag, and out comes this most beautiful, beautiful small golden chalice with the story that she had been passed on to her. My granduncle died, survived the war, was wounded at the Battle of Passchendaele, was shot, but survived. He died in 1952. So in 1951, he passed on this chalice with a message to this priest, and he had it done up and engraved. And it's the Latin phrase, which I don't know, but it's kind Lord, grant them peace. So Father James told the other priest, this is an important chalice, and this is the message to the soldiers of World War I. So that's what she knew the story as. Then she said to me, it belongs to you, you take it. So, and it actually is in St. Colum's College, but I went there this morning to get it just to show you. Because my granduncle went to school in St. Colum's, and so it seemed nice, and they have done a whole big project. So this is a little chalice that was brought back, and it's if you kind of look at it, it's a little bit like the Leaning Tower, but isn't it beautiful? So, and the engravement is Father James McRory, 1951, when he passed it on to the other priest. So this beautiful, beautiful chalice survived and was used to serve the soldiers in World War I. Now, how does that all happen that I end up there? Then, I don't know. I really don't know. But it is an amazing thing and somehow meant to be. And maybe it's about telling the story, because St. Colum's College have done a whole big project. They've even created a little film which is on YouTube about him. And it has inspired their kind of research around World War I, which is important as well. So last year, to finish the story, I was commissioned to write a piece of music that would be dedicated to the chaplains during World War I, that served during World War I, and to be performed on the very battlefield that not far from there, my granduncle was wounded on the 17th of October 1917. And it was an outdoor event, and it's the 10th of November, so it's cold, but it's all done by torchlight, and it's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So, of course, my inspiration was my own granduncle. It's called In My Darkest Hour because it's the darkest hour for the soldier who is in a difficult way and maybe dying, but it's also in my darkest hour, and certainly the darkest hour for the chaplain, because he has to manage that, and he has to, I suppose, give guidance. He is the one they're looking to with pleading eyes. And for that reason, it's their darkest hour, because where can they go to ask the questions then? Only to their hearts or their head, or to the whoever's above. So this is In My Darkest. I'll just leave this here if that's okay. And this was performed on the battlefields of Passchendaele in November. And I need to stand up for this. This is In My Darkest Hour. thank you. Daryl will be happy to answer any questions.
Like it. Like.
I don't know if it maybe speak for everybody here. That's just beautiful. And I think if everybody's happy, we've time for another song and another story, if that's all right with you guys.
Yeah, okay, no problem. No problem at all.
More,
Okay.
Very moving. It's just,
Oh,
so
thank you very much. Thank you. Aye, and I'm aware that this chalice is sitting in front of me too. It's quite, yeah. Okay, I suppose I think it's to highlight the story of Laura Gailey would be an important story. The only woman on the Diamond War Memorial, and had the pleasure of working with Eamon Baker, who wrote a wonderful script for a short film. Some of you, I'm sure, have seen. It's on YouTube. Laura Gailey, and it really looks at if Laura Gailey returned to the city, what would she find? How would she find she's remembered? How would she find the people that left all over Ireland to fight in a war? How are they remembered? So that was maybe her questions. And just to come back 100 years later, I worked with an organisation called the Roses of No Man's Land, and an English group who were set up to dedicated to, I suppose, nurses, and leaving benches and cemeteries where you could sit and remember particularly the nurses. And important to remember the woman as well. And Laura would have signed the declaration. She would have then went to tend and care for the men that were coming back from the war in Liverpool. Unfortunately, she took measles and died of pneumonia in March 1917. And Laura, it's an extraordinary story because Laura's funeral in Liverpool was a huge, huge event. And a gentleman wrote back to Great James's Street, to the Presbyterian Church, that she must have been an incredible woman because guards of honour, there was 200 nurses that lined the way. There was like 4 different bands there, and every one of them said what a caring, beautiful human being that Laura Gailey was. And maybe we didn't realise that. We didn't realise that in this city. And I know her story is going to be told again quite soon through a different way, and which is great. But so when the group Roses of No Man's Land approached me to write a piece of music dedicated to nurses, who else was I was going to pick Laura Gailey, of course. And so they asked me to write it, and then they asked would I perform it at the Men in Gate while they were there in dressed in nurses' uniform, and one of them was named Laura Gailey. So it was a big honour. And this is the piece that I wrote, and it's called Roses of No Man's Land, which would have been the name given to the nurses during World War I. Just stand up again. you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Thank you.
Any questions?
Is that a good thing?
Just thinking that there must be similar poignant stories being told in Germany and Austria and Italy and Eastern Europe.
Yes.
And I wonder, has anyone ever looked into those and seen if there's any link-ups anywhere?
Well, it is. I suppose, I would go to the German cemetery at Langmark and stuff like that. And I think only Germany's only starting to kind of come to terms with their own stories now as well. But now is the chance to kind of link it. And the commemoration that I was at in November, Passion Day, that played in my darkest hour, was for the first time there was a German delegation there in their German uniforms. And it was very, very poignant. And talking to them afterwards, it was as significant for them as the people that were there, seeing them there. But of course they are stories, but we're not aware of them yet. But it's a good point, and maybe we should look into and see where they might cross as well. Yeah.
I think from the programme's point of view, and you heard the young fella talking on the video there, it's a very, very important aspect of our programme as well, the German graveyard. And it's really probably, in terms of visually, it's the one that it impacts them the most.
Yeah.
Up to that stage, they then go to Tyncott and see the size of that. But up to that stage, all they've seen is the perfect white headstones of the Commonwealth. And then they come and I think the young guy described it perfectly, the way he said about the coldness and the darkness and the way that their headstones are laid flat and stuff. And it's such a shock to the system when you've been 2 full days of seeing the pristineness of the Commonwealth graveyards to come and see that stark reality of the German one as well, you know. So it's a huge. I think it's a huge part to play in any kind of programme you do out there as well.
And in remembrance as well.
And actually, me and Tracey were out a couple of weeks ago and went to Bayernwald out there as well, which is trenches, German trenches that are dug out. And they're probably among the best that we've, in terms of how they're kept and how they're presented. Brilliantly done, with a brilliant scale model of the battlefield and things like that as well, which if anyone goes out, I'd highly recommend taking in Bayern. I don't know how it's said, Bayernwald or Bayernwald. Very, very good as well. So that's very important in programmes to get to remember the German side as well, you know.
I think that's probably. That's just wonderful. Again, it's just lovely to hear the music and the stories. The programming with Engage Your Youth, it's fantastic to hear that kind of context, you know, the work that you're doing and have been doing. Hopefully there's an opportunity to keep doing that.
Yes, yeah,
you know.
yeah. And actually, this summer we will be working. It's very different. It's actually the first time we've said it out loud. Well, in public. That we are organising a trip to the battlefields, but it's not like an ordinary trip. It's going to be a very kind of creative side to it, and using the arts, which I feel is very important out there as well. So through music, poetry and song. And we'll be organising that now in the summer, possibly towards the end of the summer. We're just looking at dates. But if anybody does want to get in contact with us on that, we can leave details here. That's not a problem. Or you can get us on Facebook or through Susan here. Yeah.
And it will take in all the kind of the usual stuff that you would see out there, the Somme and the battlefields and things, but just with that kind of musical and artistic twist to it as well, that Tracey does so well.
Very much.
It's the first compliment she's got in 2.5 years, so you're privileged.
Believe me.
Thank you so much I can't believe you were telling the story about the Charles, and the next thing you bring it out of your bag. It was just amazing. It's just so moving, and it is so beautiful. And to think if it could tell the story, I mean there is a story, but I'm sure it's amazing. It's been a lovely lunchtime event. I'm really glad you've come along, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So